Diontae Johnson is back for the Steelers after the bye week. That's huge news. We'll talk about the impact of that on the offense as a whole, what it might do for Kenny Pickett and George Pickens, and whether or not that can fix the offense, as well as talking about Joey Porter Jr., his improvement, and where is the secondary right now for the Steelers. All here on an action-packed Wednesday episode of the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, joined today by Brooke Pryor of ESPN. It's going to be a fun episode here. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting platforms and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We bring you your team every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. And today's episode is brought to you by Jase Medical. Jase Medical gives you the chance to empower yourself when you purchase a Jase case, providing you with a personal supply of 5 antibiotics that treat 50 or more infections. Get yours today at jasemedical.com. That's Jase medical.com. We're joined, as I said before, by Brooke Pryor from ESPN. She's a recurring guest on the show. We're glad to have her back. Brooke, the huge news for the Steelers on Tuesday was that Diontae Johnson saying he's 100%. He said he had been 85% leading into the game against the Ravens, but now he's ready to go against the Rams. What's your sense of how much of an impact he can give to this Steelers offense that has struggled through 5 games?
You know, I hate to say that I forgot about Diontae Johnson, but in some ways it's not, and it has absolutely nothing to do with how much he can do for this offense or how good he is. But this offense has had so many struggles that I think I forgot, like, oh yeah, they do have something that should help them on the bench stashed on IR. Like, the only time I thought about Diontae Johnson was when I saw him at the games on the sideline walking around, or when I checked my fantasy roster and thought, God, why are my wide receivers so bad? And then I scrolled down to the bottom and I was like, oh yeah, that's because one of the guys that I drafted the highest has been on IR since week 1. I really liked how emphatic he was when we talked to him today. And the first question was, are you going to be able to go against LA? And he's like, hell yeah. Like, you can tell that he is so frustrated, not in a way that's detrimental, but in a way that's just like, man, he felt like he had a good camp. I think he knew a lot of the buzz is around George Pickens. It's not around him, which is kind of, I think, a good thing, because then he's not, the focus of, oh, Diontae Johnson didn't score any touchdowns last year. I think that he's feeling like, you know what, this is a really good tandem. Like, finally, I'm not going to get double teamed every time. We have enough options that they really have to spread the ball out. And I think it's so frustrating too, knowing that he got hurt on his biggest gain of the day in week 1. He was in the middle of a 26-yard catch and run play that felt like that was one of the few bursts of offensive momentum that we saw from the Steelers in week 1. And so when I think about what can Diontae Johnson coming back add to this offense, it's that yards after catch ability that I think Calvin Austin has some of that, but I think that Diontae is more proven. I think he has better ball skills in terms of making those catches. It's probably still an interception, the ball that Kenny Pickett threw to Calvin Austin against Steven Nelson. But I think it's maybe a little bit more of a competition. Like, I don't know that Steven Nelson could out-jump Diontae Johnson for that ball in the same way. Maybe it's just knocked away instead of an interception. But I just think that the speed, the yards after catch, all of that just makes this offense more dynamic and gives Kenny Pickett a new option that he hasn't had. Maybe this is the thing that's really been missing over the first 5 weeks.
It could very well be. Last year, even though Diontae Johnson didn't score a touchdown, even the most analytical people, we talked about reception perception, a website you can go to that tracks all the separation data, tracks every single route and how successful they are. And they rated along with ESPN, Diontae Johnson as the best route runner in the NFL. that is an asset to a young quarterback who's just trying to find easier throws. Something we talked about with Alan Saunders yesterday from SteelersNow.com on this very show was about the Steelers needing easy yards incorporated to their offense. So many of their passes are tough, back shoulder throws or jump catches, and you don't want everyone to be like that. Diontae Johnson, with his ability to get open the way he does, will give you more options like that. And if he's doing that, like you said, if they do have to double team him, it then makes George Pickens much more available for bigger play opportunities, which then opens up everyone else. Pat Freiermuth can come back at some point. Calvin Austin, if he's on there, now he's not the number 2 wide receiver you're most scared about. He's the 3rd wide receiver you're scared about. And it just does so much more. But a big question that everyone has, Brooke, is can Kenny Pickett take advantage of an opportunity like that?
God, you have to hope so. I mean,
right?
He has just been so off through the first 5 weeks, and there are just red flags everywhere. That's almost like you watch him play and you're like, oh my God, like, you almost like gaslight yourself into thinking like, was he good last year? Because was he actually good in the preseason? Because this doesn't look at all like the quarterback that I thought I was going to be watching, because its accuracy isn't there. The throws that he has to the sideline, there was one that he threw behind Pickens, I think it was in the first quarter, that was there a miscommunication? Did the ball come off his hand weird? That there's just so many things that you don't know what the problem is. Is it a mechanical thing? Is it a decision-making thing? Is it not being on the right page with your receiver? Is it a receiver deciding to do his own thing? Like, it's so bad. And it's not good when there are that many problems and you can't point to which one of the issues might be the root of it. And we've talked a lot about, too, the pocket management. I mean, I think that there's no better play than that 4th down where he got hurt that he sacked himself. That, to me, is also incredibly concerning. That, no, he never really had great pocket management in college, but the fact that that was an emphasis in the offseason, and it's still, I feel like, kind of coming back even stronger through the first 5 weeks, because we didn't necessarily see the same problems last year. The happy feet thing wasn't a thing that I remember harping on. I felt like, yes, he had the intangibles, but he was also confident in the decisions he was making, and he just played like he was older than his years, which like made sense. Yeah, he was what, a 25, 26-year-old rookie. Okay, yeah, it makes sense that he's playing confidently, but he just looks like he's regressed through the first 5 weeks of this season. And that, to me, is what is so concerning. And everything about the way he's playing looks hard. The offense looks hard. Nothing is effortless. And you would expect to see it be smoother at this point in his career as a starting quarterback, given the way he came out. He didn't come out like Patrick Mahomes. He didn't come out like Joe Burrow, rookie, like any of that, but he gave you enough that made you feel like, oh, he can be a competent quarterback and make the right decisions and not turn the ball over. And he's had 4 picks in the first 5 games. The offense isn't moving fluidly. Just it looks discombobulated.
I'm right with you. And it's something that I've said, some people, we did our stars and skulls grades that we do for this podcast. And I gave him 1 star, and some people felt like that's way too low. I'm like, listen, he made 1 big play at the end of the game and a few passes here and there, but he hasn't played a whole good game yet for the Steelers. He's had good moments against the Raiders. He's had good moments against the Browns. He had good moments against the Ravens, but by and large, Kenny Pickett is still not playing at the level that I think that either of us expected him to, or I think even the Steelers expected him to. Like you said, in the preseason, he was lighting it up. He was throwing it all over the place, and not just in like, oh, wow, the defense wasn't paying attention because it's the preseason, but like in tight back shoulder throws, 30 yards downfield, hitting seam routes against the right coverages, reading false coverages. Those things aren't happening routinely for Kenny Pickett. And that goes back to the question about, can Diontae Johnson help with that? I think he can, simply because I think Kenny Pickett, sometimes the biggest thing that can help a young quarterback is when there's a player on his team that he knows he can go to more often than not, because he's going to win in his route. And if there's anybody that wins in their routes on this team, it's Diontae Johnson. That's why I'm right with you. I think that this guy can help the situation, but it's going to take more than just his return to fix the offense.
100%. I think Kenny Pickett needs things to be easier. He needs to see some wins. He needs to see the offense move the ball down the field. There's so many little things I think that will help with the confidence that will make him feel like, okay, that's right. I do know how to do this. I can do this. I mean, he is very confident in himself. He is very mentally strong. That's been the word that I've gotten from everybody I talk to about Kenny Pickett, is that he has that X factor. We know that. But at some point, you have to see it physically pay off. It can't just you have to see the physical to get the mental boost, if that makes sense. You have to have the drives. And I think that the drive at the end of the fourth quarter to win the game, or in the middle of the fourth quarter, that should be a big boost. You kind of hate that it happened going into the bye when they can't get right back out on the field, but maybe that's a good thing. I think that it is frustrating to him, I'm sure, and the Steelers as a whole, that Kenny finally makes the throw and the play that we've been waiting to see for 5 weeks. And the discussion isn't, wow, what a great throw and what a great play. It's, who called that play? Did Kenny do that all by himself? Like, it just, every single thing gets so blown up and blown out of proportion every week. It's either 0 or 100. There's no 50. There's no like, let's wait and see. It's like, no, we have to overreact to everything.
It's so funny you say that. Steelers fans, stop doing that, because that's literally what we're talking about a lot here. I want to talk about some defense though, because Joey Porter Jr., he is a rookie who stepped up in a huge way as well in that Ravens game. And there's the question, is he now going to be the starter? We'll get Brooke's thoughts on that here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, before we go anywhere else, we'll remind you guys that this show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Our partners at eBay Motors have teamed up with our Locked On Fantasy Football host, Vinny Iyer, to bring you some of the best fantasy picks each week all season long. Whether you're prepping for a draft or scouting the waiver wire, every week we're going to provide you players that are guaranteed fits on your roster. So with this season well underway, let's see who Vinny has picked for us on this week's eBay's Guaranteed Fit Fantasy Pick of the Week. We got Matthew Stafford, who has been passing a ton all season long for the Rams, but recorded his first 2-touchdown game of the season only in Week 5 against the Eagles. And why? It's because Cooper Kupp is back. But with Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and Tutu Atwell all healthy together as his clear top 3 wideouts, he will go to work with an even bigger game at home against the Cardinals pass defense. Sean McVay has his veteran quarterback rolling, and Stafford won't disappoint in Week 6 with his young receivers balling to help Kupp. You got Stafford, who will quickly become a rejuvenated fantasy asset for 2023. That should have big days ahead. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, they have over 122 million parts and accessories for your vehicle right at your fingertips. You can make sure that your ride stays running smoothly. Air filters, brakes, batteries, taillights, alternators, shock struts, you name it, eBay Motors has it. And they'll make sure it's the right fit for your car, because eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit helps you understand exactly what parts you need for your vehicle the first time. Go forth, switch gears, crank the AC, and say goodbye to sweating if your ride needs a little fixing up. Because now you will know you'll always be set up for success from the get-go. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, everything your vehicle is calling for is just a click away. For the parts and accessories that fit your vehicle, just look for the green check. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices at ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, here with Brooke Pryor of ESPN. Brooke, Joey Porter Jr. came out, was playing a lot of snaps in the second half. Officially, I believe he played 28 total snaps in this last game against the Ravens, the most he had played all season. And in those snaps, he was out there. He had 2 assists on tackles. And the one time he was targeted was the interception that he had there. I went back and looked at the whole game, though. He looked pretty solid in coverage. We talked to him after the game. He joked around about how, he's keeping this ball. His dad got the game ball from that he intercepted during the preseason. But I think one thing that can be said is he has passed all the tests that he's been given this season. He's not been tested a whole lot. 28 snaps was the most that he had in a game. 27 against the Raiders was also up there. He had 10 against the Texans, 14 against the Browns, 7 against the Niners. We've seen him get that. But he's been targeted now 7 times in his first 5 games, allowed 1 reception for 12 yards, has a pass breakup and an interception in there. Brooke, in your mind, do we need to just cut the nonsense here and just start Joey Porter Jr. if you're the Pittsburgh Steelers?
Yes, with the caveat that I think it is okay to have a 3 cornerback rotation, because I also think that I'm so torn, right? Because the stats look really good, and the small sample size that we've seen, he has looked really good. I think if he becomes a full-time starter, offenses are going to start testing him more, and we may see those numbers adjust to be they may come back to earth a little bit. You know, I think that we're going to see more teams like the Ravens. Yes, they only targeted him one time in the OBJ throw that was an interception, but I think that we'll see teams try that more often, maybe earlier, just, you know, to feel him out. Is he going to be the weak link in this secondary? I don't think that he is. I think that he is really good, and I do love that he has had a pick now in the first 5 weeks after having won his entire college career. I feel like he is really thriving on that. Like, people thought I didn't have good hands. People said I couldn't catch. Look at me now, kind of thing, right? Like, he's not the trash talker that his dad was and is, but I think, I mean, you got to play with a chip on your shoulder, and he absolutely does that. I think that he should be playing more than he is now. I think that, you know, you don't want to take Patrick Peterson off the field completely, because I think that there's still a lot of value that he brings, even if he can't go step for step with Zay Flowers. And he's had a lot of missed tackles, but I think that there's something to be said for what he has above the shoulders that helps the Steelers and helps Joey Porter Jr. and any other younger guys out there. But I think that, you know, it should allow them to move Patrick Peterson around, to maybe put him at safety. He's talked about wanting to do, maybe he plays more in the slot, but yeah, I would like to see more Joey Porter Jr. playing maybe, I don't know, 80% of the defensive snaps.
I think that's a fair ask right now, because, you know, we'll get to the secondary as a whole in a bit here, but they haven't been great this year. They've been picked apart by a lot of top wide receivers. It's been a big factor here. But back on Joey Porter Jr. for a second here, I also have to appreciate, and I think you can appreciate this too. You not only saw him here, you talked to him at the combine, just as we were getting a chance here, and I appreciate how Joey's handled this whole process. We've asked him persistently since he hasn't been the starter, and he's still not officially the starter right now. Like, you know, hey, do you feel like you should be starting? He's never spoken out of turn. He's never like gotten frustrated. He's kind of just been like, you know, it's the coach's call, and when they call, I'm ready. You know, and I think that there's something to say with the maturity to have that, because like you said, Joey Porter Sr., he let you know what he felt at all times. Even when Bill Cowher used to be like, Joey, please just don't say anything this week. And like, he would go and he would just blow up on like Super Bowl media day, calling out half the Seahawks and everything. But Joey Porter Jr., he seems like he's like, hey, you know, I'm just giving you my honest thoughts here. He's taking it. And you even kind of see the respect from his teammates when he caught that interception. I just recall TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith running up behind him and celebrating, saying he's him. You see the whole team just get energized by his success. I think people not only respect his talents, but also how he's approached this. He's not been like, I'm my daddy's son. Do you know who my dad is? He said, hey, I'm trying to earn my spot like everybody else. And I think the whole team gets behind that kind of energy.
100%. I think that's one of the things I've been most impressed with is that maturity. Especially, I mean, shoot, you could see it in training camp that sometimes the body language, he would look a little defeated after George had another insane catch on him. Who amongst us would not feel a little defeated after that? We're like, cool, I did everything right, and this guy still put me on a poster. But he didn't retaliate. He kept working at it. He received the coaching. He was on the field after practice. He's working through things with Ike Taylor. You can just tell, like, if you didn't know who his dad was, you might think, oh, well, he has experience in the league because of how he carries himself. But to your point, like, there is none of this, like, I'm better than everyone else because I grew up in this Steelers locker room. There is no level of, there's no entitlement with him. Right. And whether it comes on the field, in the locker room, in the meeting room, there's none of that. And I think that that's really endeared him to his teammates. I think that it kind of feels like he's the little brother of the team, but in a way that everyone's like, oh man, my little brother is going to be better than me. And I like, instead of being competitive with him and try to like put him down, they all want to lift him up. And I think that that's a really good thing for this defense to have. I mean, I think the biggest thing that he's got to work on is his tackling. That was an issue that we saw in training camp. It's an issue, I mean, that we've mentioned the entire secondary has to work on, really the entire team has to work on. But I do think that he is well positioned and is showing, I mean, we had a pretty good idea before the interception that the trade to send Chase Claypool to Chicago for the number 32 overall pick was a good one. But you know, it looks even better if you land a difference-making player. And right now it seems like Joey Porter Jr. is on the track to be that.
Absolutely. And just, you know, thinking back to your points here about Joey Porter Jr., people getting behind him. The one guy who I think isn't behind him. And I want to take people behind the scenes here. It's after the game, Ravens, Steelers. We're talking to all the players. People come to the podium, and we get through George Pickens and his touchdown catch and everything. We ask him, "What'd you think about Joey Porter's interception?" He was like, "Joey got an interception? What? I missed that." That was one of the we all just burst out laughing. Like, okay, you two.
What I can't tell though. I don't think it's real beef. I think it's George is just so aloof and truly in his own world. Like, this man talks about aliens and how he's an alien, and he was on Mars, I guess, when that pick happened. I mean, surely the way I keep thinking about it is like, okay, surely he knows that somebody got an interception, because he would look at the scoreboard and realize, yeah, like he knew that something had to have happened. But you know what? Also, maybe he's just like a football mercenary. He's like, I don't really care what the score is. I don't care who I'm playing with. Put me on the field. I'm going to make a catch. Like, I don't care about the situation. I'm just going to go out there and I'm going to do my thing. So yeah, that was, but to say that on the podium is wild.
Yeah, it was just so funny. Like, Joey Porter made it, and like he was like, "Yeah, I had no idea. Congrats to him, though. I'm proud of him." Like it was just like maybe that was sincere. I just felt like, man, George, like we get that you guys were going at it in training camp, but come on, still. That was one of the funnier moments of the day that I don't think many fans got to see. I want to talk more about this secondary, though, because Joey Porter Jr.'s addition looks like it could be a help, but this secondary has so much to work on, from its safety position to its cornerback position. We'll talk about those things here on the other side of this next break here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Stick with us. It's Chris Carter and Brooke Pryor. We'll be back with you in just a moment. But first, before we do that, we're going to remind you guys, this show is sponsored by Jase Medical, which brings you the Jase case, which provides 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jase case is fill out a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians, and then you'll get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions. That's doctor-created and doctor recommended. Don't be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jase handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Jase Medical is simple. You go online, fill out a form, and then you get prescription, life-saving medications delivered right to your door. The Jase case gives you peace of mind so that you are not just hoping that you have access to medication in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure that you have the medication right in hand. Save more than $360 by getting life-saving antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off by using our code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON, locked on, all capital letters, all one word, at your checkout when you go to jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Brooke Pryor from ESPN. Brooke, let's talk about this secondary, because they've made some plays. Joey Porter Jr. made a game-changing interception. They made 3 game-changing interceptions against the Raiders, and you can say that those plays have really helped the Steelers get to this 3-2 record that has them sitting at the top of the AFC North right now. But at the same time, they're also giving up the 24th most passing yards in the NFL, the 21st most touchdowns in the passing touchdowns in the NFL. they have not been too great as a whole. And I brought up a lot of questions about this secondary. Why is Minkah Fitzpatrick moving to every spot on the secondary when his best playing spot is free safety, center field? Let him play there and everyone else do their roles. Where's Desmond King? Is he going to play? He played one snap in this last game, didn't look great in doing so, but you'd think that maybe he could help in the slot where Shandon Sullivan is getting cooked regularly. What are your biggest questions that you have about this secondary and how it can possibly form into being a more efficient unit?
I mean, the first question is, why didn't you re-sign Terrell Edmunds? Like, because Damontae Kazee is not Terrell Edmunds.
No.
And I think that you really, really miss him because he was able to play strong safety and let Minkah do whatever Minkah needed to do in the back. Like, I feel like there was just a lot more confidence there when the two of them were working together. They had a good system figured out, and Kazee, I think, wasn't ready to, and maybe never will be the type of player to step in and be a full-time safety on the field the way that Terrell Edmunds was, and how often he was able to play, and the way that he and Minkah worked off of each other. But I just think that across the board, tackling is a major issue. I think that they thought that they had more talent than they do. I think it also shows up that you miss Arthur Millette in the slot. I mean, I think that it is so frustrating to see that they have had two really good slot corners, and they have each now gone to a division rival. First with Mike Hilton, and now, Mike Hilton isn't playing quite as well as he has in previous seasons, but like, he's still really, really good.
Take that.
Right. And then Arthur Millette, who he played pretty well last year. I mean, he, if nothing else, he brought so much energy and personality to that position. And the corner blitz he had, where he just absolutely destroyed Kenny Pickett, is one of those plays where you're like, whew, it'd be nice if they had some of that. I think that the Steelers, to me, what has shown up the most, that is the most evident, is that they should have paid some more players in the secondary, because you're moving Minkah around like he can do everything. And then you kind of veer into that territory of, what is it? Jack of all trades, but master of none. Like, that's, and you don't want to waste his ability like that.
I'm right with you. It's like, look, Minkah Fitzpatrick can be good in all those different places, but he's elite in that center field. He changes the game for you. We've seen, Brooke, you've covered him change the game for several times over the past year since he's arrived at the Steelers in 2019. I'm right with you. I think I think they're trying to solve a lot of questions right now and using him to do it. And listen, he certainly helps. Like, he's certainly helping you in different spots, but we haven't seen it result in turnovers. And turnovers are the one thing that the Steelers defense is really based in right now. You look at everything else, they're 24th in passing yards allowed, they're 28th in rushing yards allowed, but they're 17th in scoring. So like, you're thinking like, wait, how does that add up? How it adds up? They have the 7th most interceptions in the NFL, and they have the 3rd most turnovers in the NFL. That's the bottom line, is that the turnovers on this team, the big plays that this group can create, is saving this defense. And listen, the tackling might get there. The run defense, I think, can take a step up when Cam Hayward returns. I think it took a step up this week when you saw them, Keanu Benton playing a little bit more. Ogunjobi looked a little bit healthier. The secondary might get better with Joey Porter Jr. in it, and maybe the safeties find whatever mojo. I know that's not a word Mike Tomlin likes to use anymore, but they might find something that gets them back in order. But having your top interceptor be in the position that allows him to be the top interceptor will only further boost that identity. And I think that's what you need to put your defense back in the conversation with being one of the more scarier units in the NFL.
Right, exactly. Well, and I think also when we talk about the corners not being as strong, like, yes, we think that Joey Porter Jr. is going to be a difference maker, but Patrick Peterson has had, one interception, and that was because Jimmy Garoppolo threw the ball right to him. Yeah. Levi Wallace has had a couple, but I think you could have so much more. Your corners get stronger if you're putting Minkah Fitzpatrick back there in a position to help them out. I just think that this is where you're seeing the Steelers did what we thought was a really good job in the offseason of kind of bargain hunting, looking for the guys that were maybe not like the top of everybody's free agent wish list, but like a middle tier guy, and bringing them in and thinking like, wow, they're spending a lot of money. They're bringing in all these guys. And it's almost like, do we have a quantity over quality situation when you bring in a guy like Desmond King? Did you really need him because you're not using him? So does he fit? Keanu Neal hasn't been, to me, I haven't noticed him being a big difference maker. Patrick Peterson, you brought him in, and I think that he is a great guy. He's a good veteran leader, but he is clearly not the same player he used to be. I think this is the situation where it feels like the Steelers got rid of some of their known assets, known quantities in the secondary, and said, we're not going to pay them, but we are going to bring in these big names, these names that have been somebody, but are they going to be the player that we have seen in the past? And that answer is no. And I think that it's kind of a perfect storm of the guys that they brought in are just not living up to at what they were advertised to be.
I'm right with you. They have it. Patrick Peterson, you thought when they signed him, the idea is that he could be like a Joe Hayden for a year or two, is just come in, be the older guy. He's not the shutdown guy anymore, but you're not going to catch him out of position, and he's going to bring you the intensity that you want. And, like you said, he caught the interception that was thrown to him against the Raiders. But other than that, he's had a couple breakups here and there, but he hasn't been the guy that you expect as to be CB1. Like, hey, we got to put him out there. We'll trust him to not get beat. We'll worry about the rest of the defense. They absolutely need that in the secondary as well as a few other things. But hey, that's part of what the bye week's for. Maybe the Steelers get on the trade market before the deadline at the end of the month. We have a lot to discuss there. She's Brooke Pryor of ESPN, everyone. Brooke, thanks so much for joining us. Let people they can find you, follow you, and get more of your work.
On Twitter at BE Pryor. Instagram, same thing, and everything else is on ESPN.com.
Absolutely. Check out her great work at ESPN. Thanks again, Brooke, and thank you all for checking us out. We'll be back here tomorrow on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We've got former Steelers executive Doug Whaley and former NFL GM. He'll be joining the show. Want to get his thoughts on the Steelers right here, so stick with us as we get throughout the week. Thanks again for tuning into the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Carter Critiques. Read my work at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com, and check me out here Monday through Friday on the Locked On Steelers podcast. We'll see you again Thursday.